Welcome to the Ayn Rand Fan Club. I'm Scott Schiff along with Sonny Lohman and William Swig. How are you today, Sonny?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. William, how you doing?
I'm good, and I'm really excited about this episode. This is our second episode on the Leonard Peikoff versus Kira Peikoff controversy. We did our first episode, it was episode 75. So if you're interested in what we covered in that episode, you can check that out. It's called On Leonard Peikoff, the Conservatorship Lawsuit and Legacy. So, what's new and why are we discussing this again? Basically, a lot more people have weighed in with their opinions and more evidence regarding this case. There's been new testimonials from Kira Peikoff, and even James Valliant went on a podcast and gave his side of the story. So we now have a clearer picture of what happened in this controversy, where Kira initially tried to have a conservatorship lawsuit against her father and then dropped it. And then Leonard, obviously is disowning his daughter now and taking her out of his will. And this controversy even reached the Atlantic magazine. So there was a big article in the magazine about it. And even Yaron Brook has responded to some questions about it. So we're going to be covering this controversy, the new stuff. And then also at the end, or maybe in the middle, we're going to present some material that Kira gave me when I asked her about this on Facebook. She gave us an audio clip of Leonard talking about his inseparable bond with his daughter. She also gave me a letter that he wrote her in January of 2022. So, and then at the very end, I'm going to give my final point, and I'm going to offer a theory on why Leonard is acting the way he's acting. I think it has to do with an error that Ayn Rand observed in him many years ago, and that he's tried to correct. But I think he's reverting back to this error now. So that's what we have on deck. So I hope you stick around with this episode and watch the whole thing, because we got a lot of stuff for you.
Sonny, you had some opening comments you wanted to make, or
Um, uh, the only opening remark that I would make is, well, first of all, this is really complex. This is, in preparing for this, oh my God, it is so complex. And obviously, this is a personal family issue, but it's public because there are public considerations. And I think it's important to keep in mind that it isn't just the relationship between a father-daughter or Peikoff's life or whatever, or even money. The copyrights to Ayn Rand's seminal works are at stake. And I think every objectivist should be concerned about where they go when Peikoff dies, because potentially, I mean, I was just trying to think of like worst case scenario. She could sell them immediately to an enemy who would then just suppress them or somehow corrupt them. I mean, you could imagine what the communists could do with their hands on We the Living, for example. Um, and for sure, there are enemies of Ayn Rand. I mean, I think obviously that people might think that's fake, but I think that's real. I think the people trying to take over the world are, um, they understand that there are ideological things at stake here. And what if it just got corrupted in some way and became like available to anyone, and we had like, Atlas porn or something like that? I mean, just like think about what that might mean if somebody bad got a hold of these copyrights.
well,
And
I
the
think
other
that's part of where the committee comes up, but we'll get into that as the show rolls out.
Okay, but if Grace, who we don't know, inherits this, I don't think we can count on a committee. I think that's you have to ask yourself, we don't know these people, right? So the question is, if she gets them, she could just sell them. She could do whatever she wants.
But the way it's being presented is it's going to be put in a trust for her benefit, where some of Leonard's
I mean, we
closest
don't
and
know.
trusted
Yeah,
friends,
we don't
like
know. What I'm trying to say is what's going on with Peikoff right now, the copyrights are at stake.
I think
We
that's
don't
true.
know.
I
We
think
don't
that's
know
shaping
what
both sides and,
what the
and
will is
how
going to look
they're
like
kind
when
of
he dies.
posturing.
or what's actually happening behind the scenes. We don't know. And so it's a question. It's a question. Kira is a known person, and so is James Valliant for that matter, to some extent. But Grace isn't, and ARRI is, and I don't like what ARRI is doing. And I was really kind of glad that Kira was going to get the copyrights because I think that it's good to have someone else out there besides ARRI.
Well, can
But
I just clarify something? Because when you talk about the copyrights, there's two types. There's the novels and there's the nonfiction. So my understanding was that ARI was going to get the nonfiction material copyrights, and then Kira was going to get the three main novels.
that's correct.
Uh,
I don't
so
know if the ARI portion can be unwound at this point. It may already be done. That's my understanding is that the really what's at stake are the three novels.
yeah, so I mean those are the big ones. So those are the money makers, obviously. So that it's really important just in terms of where the objectivist money goes. That's important. Who's going to get that money? Who's going to
Yeah, you're
benefit
right. That
from
is
it?
important.
Um,
Is it
who
going to
would
go
I?
to objectivism or is it going to go to something else and or just wasted? But even so, you also have the intellectual properties that could be used in a way that is not supportive of objectivism.
But some of this gets to the heart of objectivism. Who should decide how the property is distributed?
Yeah, but I think what I'm trying to say is I think this is why people should care about this issue. I think that it does impact objectivism. And the second thing that I wanted to say was I hope that people are really do try to be objective about this. It's very emotional. There are, sides and relationships and father-daughter stuff and are wanting to look up to Peikoff, who may have dementia and things like, so there's a lot going on psychologically. And it's important to sort of step back and look at the facts and try to be as objective as you can.
All right, good. Well, with that said, let's jump into things. William, you have a place you want to start? You want to jump right into the Valiant interview or Father's Day?
Well, we could start with what happened immediately after our last podcast. I think the first thing was that Carl Barney wrote a blog post, and he gave his information that he had because he's the one who hired Grace to be Leonard's caregiver.
He also
So
hired Shelley.
yeah, Shelley Jones was his assistant and Leonard's assistant, and she gave a testimonial. But in terms of Carl's blog post, I think what we learned from that is primarily that he hired Grace, and also he had a phone call with Leonard in which there was some phone shenanigans apparently going on where Carl asked Leonard like what happened with his daughter, and then Leonard went silent for like a minute or something. And so Carl Barney is thinking that somebody muted the phone. So that's more first person testimony that there was something going on and they were trying to manipulate Leonard.
But he's speculating. It could have been Peikoff that muted the phone.
Yeah, but I think that's mostly what we got from, his first person testimony. And that's all I really wanted to mention regarding his blog post.
I think it's worth mentioning that in early 2020, he was, Peikoff was despairing, and that's the context through which Barney hired Grace in the first place. And so I guess, part of me wonders where was Kira during this time? I think she was living on the other coast. I know
Carl,
COVID must have been going on.
in his blog post, Carl mentions he consulted with Kira. He talked to Kira about it. And so they were in a joint agreement, I guess, to hire Grace. So she was involved, and I think based on her testimony, she's been in regular contact with her father. So up until 2023, she was calling him a lot regularly and had regular contact with him, even though she may have been on the other coast, across the country. And she did visit him, for birthdays and holidays.
I mean, what Barney
She would,
said was,
I live in the same town. I live in Laguna Beach. Carl Barney lives in Laguna Beach. Leonard Peikoff was in an assisted facility about 5 minutes up the coast from Carl's house. Kira used to come here for months at a time. And I think COVID, she was here for half. I don't know for sure because I don't actually know her personally, but I've met her a couple of times, but I don't have a relationship with her. But I seem to remember on Facebook that she would come here for months at a time with her family during COVID. And so I think she definitely was back and forth. And Carl being 5 minutes from Leonard and Leonard having quite a few friends and associates in the vicinity might give her comfort to do that.
and I mean, ultimately, Carl seemed to want to sort of take Kira's side, but not take sides and say they both, you know, deserve our pity or something along those lines. But yeah, so then after there was also this article in the Atlantic that Kira contributed to. And she talked about how she says in the introduction where she posts the article, I was approached by a reporter at the Atlantic magazine some months ago after he saw my dad's defamatory letter about me on Facebook. The reporter said he suspected there must be more to the story and asked me to share my experience. So I find it interesting that she uses the term defamatory. I mean, is he incapacitated or is this of his own making?
He did call her evil and a bunch of names. So,
You
I mean,
guys are using language like he called her this stuff. I don't think he wrote that letter.
yeah, that's up for
And
debate.
I mean, I have been a student of objectivism since I was 17. And I read I read Opar probably 8 or 9 times. I studied that book. I listened to lecture after lecture. I've read everything. And I was reading that letter and I'm like, this doesn't sound like him at all, either in just the way of speaking. It's not Leonard. And furthermore, and by the way, I don't have a personal relationship with him either. I've also met him a few times. I also don't know him personally. So I have no like dog in this. I don't have a bias. But I was reading that and I'm like, social justice, greed, like these are words that objectivists don't use typically. And the appeal to the founders and just like this very bizarre reasoning and rambling stuff, it didn't seem like him at all.
I
And
can
I've,
believe he got help from Valiant, but he was trying to rally people to his defense
why?
because
Well,
there was
and
an
I think
active conservatorship
But
case.
you are assuming that. Have you talked to him? You
but
know,
Well,
that
I mean, he
at the end of that letter, I don't think he thanked Valiant. I could be wrong about this. I think he thanked two other different people who helped him prepare that
Carrie,
letter.
I asked who those people are. And one of them is his massage therapist. And the other person, Kira doesn't know who it is.
Okay, so he had help doing the letter, so they may have listened to him talk and then helped write the
Wrote
letter.
the letter.
But
Yeah.
we do have other ways of verifying his attitude towards Kira because
Yeah.
Shelley Jones has said that in her presence he called her Hitler.
As well
Um,
as Carl Barney's letter.
yeah, so there, I'm pretty sure he had a very negative opinion of his daughter at that time and was
right.
expressing it to
And it
very.
makes sense if he didn't think he deserved to be in a conservatorship,
No, it doesn't make
then
sense.
well,
It
it
doesn't
makes
make
sense
sense.
from I mean, I guess, I've seen how he's treated people that he's ousted from the movement. And it is
I
This is going
this
to
is his
get to.
daughter. This is his daughter and his grandchildren. I don't think this makes any sense from that. You don't just go, oh, I can't love this person. You say, what this person is doing, I cannot believe how, how this person is going against my wishes. I love them, but I cannot have a relationship with them. Like that's how parents speak about their kids.
Or are you saying it doesn't make sense that he would call her these names, or it doesn't make sense that he wrote this letter at all?
I don't think he wrote the letter at all. I think that he's my personal take. I mean, we're going to get to the end and have a take. My personal take is he has dementia.
Okay, but I do you think that he in 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 spirit he agreed with the letter?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't make much difference then, because whether he wrote it or not, that was his attitude, and so he had help writing it.
Yeah, but I guess what I think is, was he capable of rational thought and and understanding the implications of his actions and behaviors and analyzing what Kira had done and what's happening around him. I mean,
Personally, I think he was heavily manipulated into these ideas about his daughter.
yeah,
And and at the very end, I'm going to get into my theory of why he's acting this way.
yeah.
But it has to do with an overemphasis, an error he makes in overemphasizing the moral over the practical. And
You guys, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
so basically, he takes a side. He makes his opinion up, his mind up. He forms an opinion, and then he just goes full blown evaluation mode
Yeah.
and like hyperbole, all this nasty rhetoric, and he'll just go overblown and forget like the practical consequences.
Yeah, I think that it could be that in combination with dementia, because typically a healthy minded person knows how to um, take those instincts or whatever and modify them because it's about, it's your daughter or your grandkids and you're 90 and whatever. You have other considerations besides your anger. You're
Right.
not just going with the flow of your anger. You're thinking, well, I'm really mad and I'm upset and I love my wife, but it's my only daughter and I love her, but I'm just gonna have to distance myself from her now. That's how a reasonable person acts.
I think he's used to exercising power. And as people get older, especially when they're in a position of power, they use the inheritance as like a way to keep control as their mind is failing, but they're not necessarily, uh, incompetent. And that was happening. And he was doing that as a matter of course. He changed to make ARRI the beneficiary in January of 2022. He changed it to Kira by July of that year. And this was before Grace. So I think there's a pattern of him using that. And it was really when Kira crossed him and said, she wouldn't agree to not challenge his will. And we're going to get into those clips. That's
Okay.
he was exercising his power and said that I'm going to cut you out of my life.
Again, Scott, I got to point out that regarding the copyrights, I don't think he changed his mind at that period of time. He was talking about two different types of the copyrights. So he gave ARRI the copyrights to all like the nonfiction stuff, and then Kira was going to get the novels.
The reason I don't think that's correct is that he had ARRI actually change the page from January to July when he changed it to Kira, and the original page is gone. And so I don't, but I don't want to get bogged down in that. Are there any other Atlantic quotes you wanted to hit before we get into this the interview?
I just wanted to point out in the Atlantic article, it kind of misled me a little bit in thinking that Grace and Leonard got married in September. But apparently they got married either very early on after he got home from the hospital in July or August.
That's right.
So,
Well, and then they had a public ceremony after.
But they
yeah, so
got legally married at a courthouse with her son as the only witness.
yeah, and from my understanding, it was like August 31st or something, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
because that's what I saw in like one of the testimonials.
If you approach this, if like you actually had a bias, if you approach this with Peikoff has severe dementia and doesn't know what he's doing. That to me is how you should approach this because it's possible. And if you see a letter that he supposedly wrote or things that he supposedly said, you have, and maybe you don't know anyone who's had dementia, but people talk, they say stuff, they talk to you, they can talk to you about things they know about, but they can't remember 5 minutes ago what the conversation you had. They can't, they can have memories implanted. They can have, they're very, very manipulatable. And then you can sit down and talk to someone who's done philosophy their whole life for half an hour about philosophy, but they can't make themselves dinner or even remember that they had breakfast. So dementia is not like you're not talking to a retard. You're talking to a person who seems to function in realms. And then in other realms, they just don't function at all. So, I mean, I would encourage people to just look it up, get the page one of signs of dementia. It's not like you can't talk to them. And a lot of times, too, in fact, one of the top 5 symptoms is denial and defensiveness. So my mom had it. So, like, I really know what this looks like. And I could have a conversation with her about something she was very familiar with. And then she wouldn't remember, though, that 5 minutes ago I told her her cousin has cancer. You know, she wouldn't even remember that and couldn't make her dinner.
But in the eyes
So
of the law, Peacock, because the conservatorship didn't go through, he still has the legal
she
right to
dropped
be
it.
making his financial decisions.
I know, but like, think about how hard that is. My mother was in denial the entire time. I would have had to take her to court and treat her like a child and force her, and she would have been so mad at me in order to get control of her finances when she could not manage them. But she would have resisted me. I mean, I never had to do that, but it was headed in that direction. And it's like, do you kidnap your mom and take her to court and make her hate you? Or do you let her live alone and maybe kill herself accidentally by, blowing herself up by leaving the stove on improperly and,
Well,
or not knowing how to work the
anything
gas
else
stove?
you want to say about Grace? I mean, Peacock is still kicking.
This topic of cognition and mental capacity is part of the first clip we have in the Valliant interview. So maybe we should move on to the clip and then we can continue talking about memory and cognition.
Okay. And just as a lead in, what happened Father's Day, Kira posted something about being with her dad. And then Valiant posted this, if your true interest is a desire for renewed communication with your father or the possibility of a relationship between Leonard and his grandchildren, there's a very simple but necessary precondition. Renounce any future legal action against your father's estate or his wife or his stepson, and state in writing that he is mentally competent and that he has not been subject to undue influence from anyone. That's from a letter that Kira released. And so, Kira adds, any version of reconnecting with my dad requires me to grovel, deny the truth, and sign a contract is not an offer for a relationship. It's conditional, accusatory, and cruel, not to mention an evasion of the well-documented facts.
Yeah, that's really,
Furthermore, she should retain her right to sue the hell out of Grace when Peikoff dies. She said she withdrew her suit because it was too stressful for her father and she worried about his health. And so she withdrew her suit. If I were her, I would be like, I guess, at some point he'll die and then I will get that woman.
Well, that comes up as well in the clips. So,
Why should she give up her right to do that? You know,
well, it
for
just,
for
but
potentially,
ultimately, this comes down to the issue of, is this about the money, which she has denied over and over again. I think she has the right for it to be about the money and to say that my kids deserve it or whatever, but she can't really say it's not about the money.
why not? Why can't she say that?
Because as we'll see in these clips, I mean, that has been the issue, her agreeing to, from even before she was disinherited, to agree not to go after Grace. But
But
just
if you think someone is taking advantage of your father and hurting him, why would you give up your, and that is going to take all of his wealth? Why would you give up your right to go after her? Not
But
for the
it's not,
wealth, but to the justice of it.
it doesn't have to be just about the money. The money is part of it, but if you listen to what Kira has to say, it was after she learned about these attempts to manipulate Leonard. That's when she got involved with the conservatorship lawsuit, because she was hearing things, about, isolating Leonard and muting his phone and and manipulating his emails, all sorts of this stuff, to try to
Also
prevent.
neglecting him.
well, that
And
is
so
one
that's
side of the story. There's another side that Valiant presents. Sonny, you want to make another point before we jump into the interview?
Nope.
Okay. Well, so Michael Liebowitz interviewed James Valliant after this Father's Day came up. Valliant decided that he wanted to defend himself. And in this first clip, Liebowitz asks Valliant about Peikoff's mental state.
You've known him for 40 years. Is there, in your view, and I know you're not a psychologist, and Holly as well, has there been the kind of marked decline in his cognitive abilities or in his gullibility that you would think that he's susceptible to be taken advantage of in the way that's being suggested?
No. Has he slowed down? Yeah. Is he physically more frail? Absolutely. Does he have occasional memory lapses? Absolutely. He'd be the first one to tell you that. He asked me, catch me, Jim, when I do that. And he does have occasional memory lapses, but his cognitive ability, his personality, they're just the same. It's the same Leonard I've known for 42 years.
I just wonder, I mean, there is some question. Kira has said that he had no relationship with her father as far as she knew prior to his relationship with Grace. And so I guess my question is, what was the nature of his relationship with Leonard Peikoff for 42 years? I could say that I have had a relationship with Leonard Peikoff for about 30 years because I met him at a barbecue, for the July barbecue 30 years ago. But I don't consider myself to have a relationship with him, even though I've met him on several occasions. But it's in Valiant's interest. And I mean, we have to weigh, you have a lot of people saying different things here, and everybody's got an interest. And who is the onus of proof on? And you can't just say, and you can't just spit out, well, I've known him for 42 years, and therefore I know, as against all of these other people who say that he has cognitive decline. You can trust me. And I'm in contact with him every day right now, and I'm the only one. And you can trust me, and I've known him forever. And all of these people who've also known him forever are wrong.
Well,
even
he
according
says
to
there are
what-
others too, and that's going to come up in a later clip. But he is.
Does that not make you suspicious at all?
Well, I mean, look, he has idolized Leonard for 42 years or whenever he broke with Rothbard, and he was there when Peikoff was writing Fact and Value. I mean, the attack on the
But what do you mean
Brandon's
by
book,
there?
that was at,
What's there mean?
I don't.
they
I
were
don't
in
think
like a
this is-
weekly objectivist group in New York City.
I don't think this is the point to attack him on. What really is happening here is he's defeating his own point by saying that Leonard is slowed down and has memory lapses. And then he goes on to say a little bit later after that clip that Leonard still has his full cognitive capacity. This is ridiculous. He just said that Leonard is slowed down and has memory lapses. That's part of cognition. It's like James doesn't understand what cognition is. Memory is critical. It's a critical factor in
It
cognition.
is critical.
They're using
Yeah.
specific legal language to defend him against attempts at another conservatorship or to say he's
Well,
incompetent.
it's ridiculous language then, because he's just defeating his own point, and he's
That's a
obviously
good point,
lying.
William. Yeah.
He's-
I think
he's
he's
either-
obviously lying.
He's
he's
either
trying to make a
lying.
legal distinction, and I mean, because he's, he's saying, yes, he's slowed down and stuff, and he's got memory lapses. And this gets to a finer legal point of when someone should lose control of their assets.
Well, so is he lying to protect Peikoff and to protect, because lawyers will say things according to, they don't want to make any admissions that could then be later used against him. If he were to come
Right.
out and go, yeah, he has cognitive decline, well, that's gonna,
Yeah,
that is going to be used against
but I
Peikoff. So
also believe that he did say in the video that he and even his wife, Holly, has given Peikoff the once over and even grace, and, that they kind of, won them over, but that Peikoff, I think he believes that Peikoff is fine enough that he's still making his own decisions, even though
do
he
you?
slowed down, or at least that's what he's telling himself.
Well, of course he's making decisions. I mean, even a person who's on his deathbed can make decisions. It's not that he can make decisions. It's like at what capacity is his competence? Like, is he competent to manage his finances, to manage his relationships, to buy things? Is he competent? He gave away a whole mansion to Grace. So is that part of being competent? That seems ridiculous to me.
Well, we'll get into that part as well, but
But I
speaking,
wanted to make a point toward what Sonny asked, is that about Valiant lying. I think this is going to be one of my sticking points, is that all throughout this video, he makes ridiculous statements which show that he's either lying or he just doesn't know what he's talking about. And in this case, I think he's lying because he's got to know that memory and your capacity to thinking, that's important to cognition. And
He
so,
also knows that he wasn't close to Leonard Peikoff for 42 years, but he's putting it out there as if he is a close friend who's been around recently and seen the decline or not decline of Leonard, and that he can attest to that because he's so close to Leonard Peikoff.
they have gotten close over the last year. I mean, even if you think he's
Yeah, but
isolated, Peikoff's one
after
of the.
Grace, we're talking about, he's saying, I've been around for 42 years. You can trust me. I've known him really well for 42 years. That's what he's trying to say.
I think he's just trying to like show how close he is to Leonard more than. I mean, he has,
Yeah, so that
the
he can
way he
establish his
described it is he hadn't,
credibility.
and he does say he hadn't been in touch with Leonard for a while, and he just emailed his old email address out of the blue when he heard about this stuff going on, and that's when Leonard said, "James, I need your help."
okay, so can we move on to the testimonies of Kira and Shelley, because that relate to this? Because Kira responded and said that James is deliberately misrepresenting the medical records. The court ordered independent neurologist found in 2024, I'm quoting here, that he has declined cognitively from his baseline level, primarily in memory. So even the neurologist pointed out that he's suffering memory loss and is declined in his cognition. So if
What I
that's
learned
true,
from reading the reports is that either side can get their doctor to say anything.
okay, but this was the court ordered neurologist apparently. So James could come back and retort and say, no, Kira's wrong. That's not what it says.
James
But he
has
hasn't,
not put forth a neurologist report.
James hasn't put forth anything. He just talks, secondhanded gossip, and it's really annoying and irritating.
I obviously that neurologist report wasn't strong enough to make conservatorship a slam dunk.
That's not true. That isn't
That's not the
true.
reason. That's not the reason Kira gave for dropping the case. So it's not clear who would have won the case because it didn't happen.
She wasn't
The
granted
trial
an
never
emergency
happened.
conservatorship.
She wasn't granted an emergency concern. That's different. But she didn't lose the trial.
Right, but I mean, I think she gave it up because she was concerned about not winning and the effect.
That's not what she said. She said
I
that
agree that I mean
so
a lot of people are saying things for different reasons in
when
this. That,
she said when she didn't get the emergency injunction, which would have given her sudden control, or an independent person sudden control over him. The next phase is a lengthy suit and trial. And she decided it was too much stress on her dad and herself. And so she gave it up. So she tried to get in there and get something done. And maybe she didn't realize how stressful it would be. We don't know, but she said that she dropped it because of the stress.
Yeah, I mean, I understand there are some things that James asserts as well that I don't accept.
Well, but this is a neurology report that you are dismissing in exchange for
I'm just
James's
saying that
vibe. He
I
didn't submit a neurologist report. We have one neurologist report.
Leonard's report was saying, doctor's report was saying that Kira was stressing him out. So
I'm sure it was stressing him out. Anyone could imagine that would be extremely stressful.
Yes.
Nobody's disputing that, but people are disputing whether or not he had a cognitive decline.
Right. And I think that's part of what James is doing. He's trying to make a distinction that even covers some of what might show up on a test with things like memory, but to say still mentally competent, to make that legal distinction. But I do want to move on to this next clip where Valliant claims that Leonard is in control of the relationship with Grace.
Apologies to Grace. She's a sweet lady. But if anyone is dominant in that relationship, it's Leonard who's dominant, not Grace. Grace loves him and admires him and worships his genius. They share values like everything. I've seen Leonard with two of his wives up close and personal. I've known his second wife, Amy, as a friend. I saw them together on more than one occasion. I saw Cynthia and Leonard together quite a bit when I was going up to his house in the 80s and 90s. This woman is the best suited wife I've seen him with. They're on the same emotional personality wavelength. They have the same sense of humor. They love the same things artistically. They have both have had a lifelong love of operetta. When they first met, it was, Leonard was playing a piece from an operetta in the background. And she comes in and she says, "Oh, I love this. This is one of my favorites." And Leonard says, "Oh, yeah, do you know the operetta it comes from?" And she named it. And Leonard asked her, "What do you think of it?" And she said, "I think it has a plot flaw."
This account comes from Grace, or this account comes from Peikoff, who doesn't remember anything? Or who, you know what I'm saying? This account has literally zero credibility with me.
That line that the operetta has a plot flaw is the same line that Leonard used in telling the story when he told it to Valliant, in the initial interview that we covered in the first episode. And so it seems like he's totally changed the story, because in the original story, Leonard was testing, I think we have this clip. Leonard was testing Grace to see if she liked operetta, and he invited her to watch an opera with him. And so it's totally changed now. Now he was listening and she came in and automatically
I love that one.
Knew which operetta it was. And, but that's not how it went down before.
Do you want to hear that clip?
He actually said first let me make this point. In the, I don't know if this is in our clip, but I watched the whole video again, and he says that she didn't know about opera before he introduced it to her. So it's crazy to think that she has a lifelong love of operetta, like James says.
Yeah,
it sounds like
lie.
He's just making that up.
Started by thinking how beautiful she is. And then one day I thought, I don't know if people know this, but Viennese operetta has taken over my life. It's such a central focus that I think of that when I wake up. I check right away with the computer about the new versions. It's like heart of my life right now, at least my emotional life. Well, not counting love of my wife, but things that you just do with life. I thought to myself, I'd like to see what her reaction is to operetta. She did not know that I was such a big thing. So I asked her if she wanted to watch an operetta with me. And she said, sure. We had been playing games together, like Wordle.
Oh, not a lifelong fan of operetta.
Interesting.
Very interesting. And for somebody who's never heard an operetta in her life, amazing that she could pick out a plot flaw. Whatever that means.
It's interesting
what does that even mean?
it's interesting that that was her first reaction to it, is that she was critical of the plot when she knew Leonard loved this form of media. And now all of a sudden her criticism makes her a serious person, you know, because she noticed a plot flaw. You know, this is how Leonard just overreacts to the moral. Like if he decides you're a good person, then everything is good that you do.
Rand could be that way. I mean, like liking Charlie's Angels and stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, if I'm just, even though those are inconsistencies, I still think it's just part of a narrative that they're building. That doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, Leonard and Grace,
but it matters, Scott. He's building a narrative of credibility to support the destruction of Leonard Peikoff's entire nucleus, his family, his grandkids, the copyrights. He's setting up a fake scenario that this is such true love, even though it looks really bad. And it's such true love. And here are my examples, and they're all fake. And then on top of that, I've known him forever, but I haven't really. And I mean, everything is fake. And all of it to try to manipulate us into not seeing the obvious in front of our faces.
Well, in this case, the manipulation is pretty blatant. And you notice it goes in one direction towards Grace being this like amazing woman who knows operetta and has a lifelong love of it. When in just, you know, in the previous interview, she didn't, it was a test that Leonard gave her and she didn't know about it. So it's like things are shifting towards Grace's perspective and Grace's narrative. It's like what we're getting now from James is just gossip about how great Grace is.
And on top of that, and I'm not the only one this happened to, but when they first posted that letter, I put a comment in there just with some 100% on Peikoff's side. But you know, what's going on? Why does he need money or something like that? You know, like questioning the narrative that was being fed.
Yeah.
And he deleted my comment. And then he sent me a private message saying, I'm deleting comments that don't support Leonard. I'm like, this does support Leonard. I support Leonard. And I want to know what's going on, you know, if you want me to help him. But that is not what he meant. And everyone I know who commented in there with any kind of question at all, not without just being effusively supportive, their comments were deleted. So the guy is creating a perception that he knows them. He's known him forever. Grace and here and love. It's this amazing thing. There's nothing untoward happening here. You know, it's all Kira.
See, if you really want to convert me, you know, you could say, oh, we shouldn't be so nitpicky, but it's exactly the way he was with the Brandons, who I tended to defend a little more. But that's a whole side issue. This next clip, in attempting to dismiss the charge that Leonard has been isolated, James claims that Leonard had been in contact with Yaron and others at ARRI recently.
Talk about these allegations and dismiss them right away. Isolated, let's talk about that first. Leonard Peikoff has over to his best friend for many years, Andrew Lewis. He's a teacher, professor of history. They have been friends for decades, and almost every Sunday, Andrew Lewis is still there. But Amanda Maxim from the Ayn Rand Institute has seen him. Catherine Dickerson, his assistant for many years ago, has seen him. He's still meeting in person. He has parties at his house. I've been to parties at his home where his friends are. Let me put it this way. He's been in telephonic or email communication since Kira filed her suit and made these allegations. After she made these allegations, Leonard has been in contact with Tal Safani, Yaron Brook. He's working on a project with Ilan Journo. Ilan wrote this wonderful letter about Leonard's brilliant insights on the project they've been working on since Kira filed her suit. So the big shots over at ARRI, current and former, and people working at ARRI, Leonard has been in contact with.
This is very clearly another deception or lie on his part, because he's not answering the question. There's obviously people who've been isolated, and they've said they've been isolated. So he doesn't even mention Amy Peikoff or Yaron or
Okay, I have a
Kira.
list of people I know he's isolated from.
Or he mentions
Kira?
Yaron, but he mentions Yaron. I'm sorry, but Yaron then will contradict him. So he's clearly not in possession of all the facts, or he's just outright lying.
Do you want to play that clip?
Even
Yeah.
Leonard Peikoff. Also, even Leonard Peikoff's brother has been isolated.
That's
because
what I
he
was just going to
challenged him.
say. It's his brother and his longtime friend and cardiologist, Dr. Laporte, his driver of 10 years, his secretary of 9 years, his financial advisor of 17 years, Lisa Van Dam. So Andrew Lewis works for Van Dam Academy, but apparently he's not talking to Lisa anymore. And Carl Barney, he had a best friend at his assisted living place that he no longer speaks to. The 2 nurses that were hired along with Grace were fired, and another nurse hired. All the friends he had in his assisted living community, Jerry Egan. I mean, Amy Peikoff and Cynthia Peikoff. It's like, and to Kira's credit, also there was a third wife that James doesn't mention. He had a wife in the assisted living facility that James never met. And that is according
ever got married.
No, you're right. They didn't get married. It was a serious relationship.
Right. Now, she does come up, Alice. But I do want to just play this clip of Yaron disputing what James said, because he says also that they haven't talked because of the Kira situation.
Valliant and Kira at it again. I know you don't like to comment, but your last meeting with Peikoff was noted as a piece of evidence that he's not being isolated. Is that a fair inference? Okay, so I don't know if you're still on. I really would like to know who raised my last meeting with Peikoff, who raised that issue, and what was that? I don't understand what's that meant to suggest. And I will say this: I have not spoken to Leonard. Not spoken to Leonard in a long time. So from my perspective, Leonard is isolated from me. So I think the reality is the opposite. Leonard, as far as I can tell, does not want to talk to me. Is cut off his relationship with me. Unrelated, not related to politics or anything like that, related to these issues. So I think the fact that my last meeting with Leonard was so long ago actually suggests the opposite, not what Valliant is claiming.
Valliant is lying up one side and down the other.
Well, look, I think he probably has been in contact with some people at ARRI. That Elan Journo thing, I doubt he just made that up out of whole cloth. There's probably something going on. But the bottom line is, to your point, that Peikoff has made, what you think of Grace, kind of a new schism point. You're either with me or you're with Kelly. You're either with Grace or you're with Kira. And when he decided that he didn't love her anymore and considered her Hitler or whatever, he wanted everyone else to have to make a choice, just like with the other schisms. And so that's as much why he cut these people out of his life.
James
Peikoff being Peikoff.
James Valliant is evading so much information and evidence that it has to be a lie. He has to be consciously trying to deceive people. And in this case, I think he's just trying to deceive Michael Liebowitz, who's the interviewer there. And
they're friends.
You notice at the end of some of the statements he makes, he has this kind of nervous laughter. And, and it's usually when he's like trying to pass off a lie, I think. And it's kind of like a duper's delight sort of lie, if you know what that is. Mm-hmm. You think you've pulled the wool over someone's eyes and you kind of giggle to yourself. I mean, what the hell is so funny, James? What's going on in your head that makes you laugh at these weird instances?
Well, I want to get to the heart of the charges. He in this next clip, going back to the Valliant interview, they state that Leonard's lawyer warned him that she was setting up an estate challenge while she was still in the will.
Getting this from Leonard.
There is a tape recording. Leonard had the presence of mind to record the phone call, and the phone call that he had with Kira after he spoke with Tom, and Tom warned him that she was setting up an estate challenge. Leonard said, Tom tells me you're going behind my back and saying I'm not mentally competent. And, she couldn't deny it. And Leonard said, well, if we're going to be friends, even despite the way you're treating my new wife, if we're going to be friends, I just want you to sign a document that says you won't challenge my will. And at the time, Kira was still very much in his will. And so, but at the time, all he wanted was a signed statement that said, you won't challenge my will in court when I've gone. She continued to negotiate with her allegedly mentally incompetent father. And the phone call ended basically with, how much more money will my boys get? Leonard just hung up the phone at that point. I have heard the tape. I have seen the neurologist reports. I've seen the financial reports.
If I think my dad is being taken advantage of and robbed of his wealth, I am going to challenge the freaking will. And I'm not going to sign a document with a dementia patient saying I'm not going to challenge the will when the woman is there controlling him. Like, if that's what I believe, my goodwill and my sense of justice would not allow me to sign such a document. And so I don't really feel that this is necessarily a point against her if you think that she thinks that. If she's coming at this from, this woman is taking advantage of my father and it's like elder abuse, and is taking his wealth, which happens every day in this country, every freaking day. And there's a 40-year age gap. She's his nurse. She's a foreigner with surrounding him and isolating him clearly from a lot of his former associates and friends. And if I think that, I'm not going to sign a document. That's what Grace wants me to do. I'm not doing it.
I think
right?
it's a point. I think it's a point in Kira's favor that she's standing her ground here, because she's standing up for her right to do what she thinks is correct. She thinks she's acting in the best interest of her father. She thinks that there's someone manipulating him, and she's trying to do what she can to fix it, and with minimal harm to her father, because she recognizes this is stressful to Leonard. But it's a point in her favor that she's standing her ground, standing on this principle, saying, look, I got all this evidence that he's being manipulated and defrauded. And so as his daughter, I'm here, I'm making a statement, I'm standing my ground, I'm pointing this evidence out. And, I think there's something wrong going on here. So I think that it's a real struggle for her, I can see, because she's kind of struggling whether to provide interviews or evidence, or, how much does she want to reveal? And, that's a problem, because it's her father, and she doesn't want to make this some public spectacle. Who would want to do that? But she also wants to stand up for what she thinks is right.
There's a consistency. I think, it's what Peikoff's been asking for all along, is for her not to challenge the will. And this goes to my point that, him switching it a bunch of times in 2022, it's part of exercising control as an older person, is being able to change your heirs. And so he was, changing it, and she just wasn't going along, and he wanted her, he heard that there was going to be a challenge. And so he went to her, and he still wanted to exercise control to see if she'd sign it, and she wouldn't. And then
she thinks he has dementia. She thinks a younger woman who is his nurse who has a mansion with a 90-something-year-old disabled man in a wheelchair with oxygen. She thinks something wrong is happening here. Why in the world would she agree not to challenge, or especially he says here, she was going to challenge his competency and say he had dementia. And he's like, are you going to say that? And she didn't deny it to him. So
Right.
she's saying to him, yeah, Dad, you have dementia. Right?
Well, it's more that she wasn't going to sign something saying that he didn't have dementia.
No, I
It's
think he
also that
said
she didn't.
that he asked her point blank, are you do you think I have dementia or something? And she
Are
wouldn't
you
deny it.
planning a
Are you planning to
conservative?
challenge my mental capacity?
Well, I think in the letter that Kira supplied, and this is another thing, Kira has been supplying actual evidence, letters and documents and pictures to support her case, where Valiant doesn't do any of that. We don't get anything from Valiant except just gossip. But
I just don't know how
to
much her letters actually prove. Um,
well,
in
it proves
this,
a lot of what she's saying. For example, Valiant was trying to say it was just about, the money or whatever, but in the letter that he sent her, it was more detailed. It was like, don't sue Grace when I'm dead, and don't challenge the will, and there's a lot more to it. It wasn't just what Valiant was presenting, and so he's
all
in the
essentially the same thing.
no, but there's more to
He
it. There were like
didn't
three
want his
different.
will challenged.
Yeah, but he also didn't want her to sue Grace or for
That's
undue.
part of challenging his will.
No, it's part of suing Grace.
Right,
So
but I mean,
it's
trying to get money that Peikoff has designated to her.
no, it's about suing Grace for
Fraud,
fraud.
and
For fraud.
elder abuse.
It's not.
But
That's the
Peikoff
will.
doesn't want to see that happen. He's happy with the current setup. And you may say he's not competent to be happy, but as far as the law goes, it's still his to determine how it gets.
That isn't true.
Well,
That's
you're
not
right.
true.
There's going to be a court fight. But just to another
Also,
one.
wait, before we move on, I'll make another point. So I think it's grotesque actually that, Peikoff demands all this stuff from Kira to have a relationship, but Kira can't demand stuff from him.
She
So
did
it's like-
demand stuff. She started countering him on the 29th, and we're going to get into that towards the end.
I know, but the relationship has to blow up because she demands what he's promised her, in his will. And yet when it's his turn to demand stuff, it's like, oh, you're not good, Kira, because you won't agree to all these terms, these ridiculous terms to have a relationship. That's just grotesque.
After the conservatorship, he felt betrayed by her.
So what?
So that's,
what?
I mean, I'm tell you something. I come at it from a little bit of a Jewish perspective. You want to talk about dementia and stuff. They call there's an old joke like, what's Jewish Alzheimer's? You forget everything but the grudges. And
Okay.
that's what we have at the end.
Does that excuse Peikoff?
It's not even meant to excuse him. It's just saying that happens. And so once you piss off someone that's decided to disown you and stuff, you have to like make amends if you really want to. And I'm not saying she has to, but because I think she's more interested in the inheritance for her sons.
I feel
why
like
can't
that is
Peikoff
so
just-
cynical. Why can't she just care about him?
Well, there are other clips in here where, Valiant claims that she's harassed him, but in this next clip, Valiant goes over how
It's her father, harassed her own father, tried to call him and talk to him.
The whole harassment thing is a joke. I mean, according to the Kira, she was having trouble even contacting him because, Grace would turn off the ringer on the phone or whatever. So of course she had to keep calling to try to get in contact with him.
All right, well, let's hear this clip and then I'll give you a chance to respond to it.
I've actually seen the transcripts of, for example, the wealth manager. Over the last several years, Kira has gotten millions and millions from her father, $4.5+ million from her father over the last 7 or 8 years. Just since 2020, when his relationship with Grace actually began, his friendship with Grace began, Kira has gotten, this is the sworn testimony of Kira's wealth manager, $3.5 million plus an, quote, undisclosed or uncertain, I forgot the exact word, plus an undisclosed amount of gold. So more than $3.5 million, all the way up to, mind you, 2023. When Grace's Svengali influence was supposed to be at its greatest, Leonard is still giving the large majority of his savings to his daughter. in the hope that that would stop her harassment for money.
That's such a manipulation. I mean, if he's going to give away his money to anybody, it should be his daughter, right?
Yeah.
But
And
that's
you
part
have to
of
do
what-
that
that's
to avoid
part of-
estate
I mean,
taxes.
that's a different issue. That is the standard way that we expect things to be in our establishment ways, but just going back to objectivism, I mean, and this is part of the issue. It's a little bit unseemly that, in a philosophy of rational self-interest, that this guy at the end of his life just wants to, give away half of his fortune or a whole fortune for some tail he's really enjoying.
Well,
And,
it points towards his lack of mental competence. Like he gave away so much of his savings that he couldn't pay his legal bills. That's ridiculous.
That's not what happened. He could, but then he bought a mansion that he couldn't afford.
Yeah, Valliant wants to put it on Kira's money, but what about the mansion he bought for Grace? And then he has to cover the mortgage payments on it. So, I mean, that's probably why he couldn't afford legal bills. It's because he bought this oversized mansion for 3 people, 5 bedrooms. What does he need this for?
Well, apparently she said she was going to start like a private assisted living in there.
right.
And Peikoff's friend was going to move in with his wife. And she never did that. So,
Well, now Valliant
Well,
also makes the charge that Kira filed the conservatorship 2 weeks after she was told she was out of the will, which I think is interesting. But in this next
I thought
clip,
you said that she was in the will until after the conservatorship was filed.
Yeah, I don't know
it
if
was
I buy that. Also,
Yeah,
I wanted
well-
to make another point before we move on.
all right.
so-
Well, this next clip is about the house.
Okay, but this is about the money. So Valliant wants to portray the money as trying to stop Kira from harassing her father for money, but I see it a different way. He gave her something like 2 million or 3 million after the whole Grace thing was happening, and I think it could have been to try to buy Kira's silence. No, he wanted to give her a bunch of money so she wouldn't complain and would agree to, Grace having 50% of the estate.
That's interesting speculation. I mean, I think it's as well. Let's play the clip about the house, and then I'll give you my theory on that.
What about this house, Jim? I think I heard $7 million. I don't know. I can't remember exact number.
$3.7 million.
Okay, that was it.
Out of the place that he was living. He wanted to live in a home with his new wife, as anyone might expect. So it was around the time they got married. Now, for years, you can hear Leonard on podcasts in the past saying, I'm never going to own it. This was like 20 years ago. Leonard saying, I'm never going to own another home. I don't want to deal with the hassles of it, the plumbing, the roofing, the gardener. I never am going to own a home again. He swears decades ago, he said, I'll never own another home. But it was Leonard who insisted on having a home. It was Leonard who picked the home. He was the guy who said, I want this house. And Grace was like, okay, if you want this house. She said, let's keep looking or something, maybe something smaller, maybe something elsewhere. And no. Leonard wanted this house. He wanted a house. He never wanted to own it. Grace did not know he never wanted to own it. The purchase price was $3.7 million. $2.7 million is mortgage. Now, Leonard did pay for most of the down payment on it, but not all of the down payment on it.
He gave Grace $1 million in cash and then also transferred this house into her name.
I think he was trying to, at the point that he wanted to be with her and had cut Kira out, he was trying to actually give Grace assets so that it couldn't even be gone after. That's the real reason.
But again, is he being manipulated to do this, or is he doing this because he's in love and it's wonderful? I mean,
Right,
the dude listen, he's bedridden, wheelchair bound, oxygen taking old man in his 90s. He's not going, oh, I can't wait to have a large mansion.
Well, the idea that he never wanted to own a house again, that's just ridiculous. I mean, he said
he wanted to buy it but not own it.
It says like 20 years ago, like decades ago, Leonard was saying this to Jim. But I looked it up, and his last house was in Laguna Woods, and he bought that in 2020, according to what my research on the internet. So he clearly wanted to buy another house in 2020. It's not like he didn't want to buy houses anymore. I think it was in Leisure World or something. So maybe they had a gardener or something. But he obviously, that's an obvious another lie that Jim's just making up, or else Leonard was lying to him or didn't.
I don't think we can
change his
take any
mind.
of what he says at face value about him saying, "Oh, it was Leonard's idea." It was Leonard. Like, we don't know. We just don't
Right.
know.
But I think at least some case can be made for Leonard is doing things to make sure that his wishes for Grace to be taken care of are seen through. And that's, you can say he's being manipulated into that, but he thinks he wants to do it.
Sure. I mean, obviously he's trying to provide for Grace and give her a bunch of money, but we don't know if he's been manipulated. It seems that the evidence we have points, very strongly towards manipulation at some level. So you just have to look at the testimonies and listen to the documents that have been presented, where
Is
things like,
is it just whim worshiping and he's just loving the loving?
well, I think he's desperate for female companionship for whatever reason. He's a man and he wants, a wife around. He said he told Kira he wanted a family around. So maybe that's just enough for him to give half of his
Probably
wealth
should have
to his
moved
wife.
back at that point.
But you'd think that a rational man in his 90s would realize that, he's got to check the woman out carefully. And I don't think he's done that. He's just like jumped to this conclusion that they're in love and she loves all the same things he loves.
But in some ways, as he feels like all these other people have betrayed him and tried to tell him this, that, she's been from his perspective, she's been one of the nice people, and James and the people defending him. So, it's actually created a stronger bond.
But there's also reports from Shelley and from other people saying that Grace and Jay, her son, were intentionally monitoring him and isolating him and checking his phone calls, and reports of Jay saying stuff under his breath about Kira and talking bad about Kira everywhere, and that they were constantly trying to.
Sounds like none of them liked each other.
They were constantly trying to badmouth her, or they were
But
trying
was that
to.
after she was bad mouthing them?
I mean, the point is they were attempting to ruin her reputation with mutual friends at parties and stuff.
Well, they were trying to shield Leonard from such questions about Grace. Like, Grace obviously didn't want Leonard to learn, all this information. So I think it's obvious that he's being manipulated in some way, and he's either aware of it or he can't remember it. He's got memory lapses. So it could be the case that he just can't remember, and whatever Grace is telling him at the moment is the truth, and he just takes it for the truth because he trusts her, because her face is beautiful.
I mean, it may be that she is just, she's come to appreciate him and she's done the math and she's like, I can love this man for a few years.
You're just making that up.
I'm
just totally making that up.
I mean, the truth is they've been together for a while. She did take care of him when he was going through some tough health stuff.
So did his other two nurses.
Well, I want to get
so did Kira. So did his close friend Carl Barney. There were people around him. Shelley was taking care of him, his cardiologist.
Shelley and Barney, it was like they were in the same camp. And once, Peikoff saw Shelley as anti-Grace, he cut her off.
Yeah, but maybe she had reason to be anti-Grace. Why would an assistant make that judgment if it wasn't actually serious?
Look, Shelley, I don't know her, but I mean,
I don't know her either.
She may be fine, but
I'm just saying,
ultimately,
stack up
someone
the people.
new coming in as his inner circle was squeezing her out.
Stack up the people on the side who were long-term friends and family of Leonard, who have raised the alarm, and you're saying by the mere fact of them raising the alarm, they're the jerks.
I understand raising the alarm. I mean, it's pretty clear there's like a stereotype of like a, younger woman getting a 90-year-old man for his money.
Not a stereotype. It's a Filipina scam.
It is a Filipina scam.
It just
Google Filipina scams.
It at the end of the day, I mean, they're together, and I think the next phase is going to be important because after Peikoff is gone, they're going to be fighting for who is more worthy, to your earlier point, Sonny, of inheriting the copyrights. And I think that inspires this story that James says about Kira, and probably what's one of his, I don't know, they just didn't need to make this point.
One thing before we go. Kira should not inherit the copyrights as she wants to, because she does not appreciate her father's work or Ayn Rand's work. That's the first thing I want to say. One of my main values in all of this is to protect Rand's legacy and to protect Leonard Peikoff's legacy. And last year, Andrew Lewis, Leonard's friend, at his 91st birthday party told me that Kira hasn't read a single word of Ayn Rand. I was taken aback by that. He was absolutely certain of it. And so I asked Leonard, has Kira ever expressed any interest in the work of Ayn Rand? If your dad is Leonard Peikoff, Ayn Rand's legal heir, and the author of the definitive treatise on Ayn Rand's philosophy, I asked Leonard, this is last summer, mind you, I asked Leonard, has she ever shown you any interest, last fall, excuse me, any interest in your work? Never once. Any interest in Ayn Rand's work? Never once. And so when we read in the Atlantic magazine that she claimed to have read Atlas Shrugged and it changed her life, we were sort of shocked by it. Leonard was totally shocked by it.
Are you going to show what Kira shared?
Well, I mean, obviously, Kira had a book signed by her dad, inscribed The Fountainhead. And I mean, I did notice
it's not just that. Didn't he say you are the right person to be taking care of this and not ARRI in particular? It was,
but see, he was going back and forth between her and them even.
Let's not beat around the bush here. Valliant is just lying. He's lying and he's doing it. His source is Andrew Lewis. He's just repeating gossip he heard from Andrew Lewis, and Valliant is lying because he could have easily checked this. He could have asked Kira, or he could have looked up things on the internet. Heck, Kira wrote an article called "A Girl by Another Name," where she talks about reading We the Living, and because she was named after the character. That was in 2012.
In 2012, she wrote an article about reading We the Living.
Reading We the Living because her father told her she was named after the character in We the Living. And so she put it off for a while because she wasn't sure. She knew at the end Kira dies, so she kind of put it off for a while. But then in 2012, she read it and wrote that article. And she also has said that she read The Fountainhead when her father gave her the book, and she read Atlas Shrugged and discussed these things with her father. And she says in her response, let me finish. In her response, she says, if my dad no longer remembers that, it sadly reflects the poor state of his memory, not my integrity. So Leonard clearly doesn't remember much.
I want to say this too. In October of 2023, she provided a message from Leonard to her that says, I have decided that the copyrights of the 3 big novels will remain yours, and therefore that you get the final decision as to the management of these copyrights. Who, if anyone, gets permission to quote, what advertising you approve, what kind of contract you want to sign, when the present one expires, etc. As we have already discussed, and as in the present will, you agree to make these decisions with guidance from Yaron and Tim, but it is you that I am trusting as the ultimate protector of Ayn's work. I am happy to see that, as you just wrote me, you have a strong personal desire for your kids and for Matt to protect Ayn's legacy. So in October
that's how
23,
he felt at the moment. Whoever he backed at that moment, he was going to totally back and say they were absolutely the right person.
But why would he, if he thinks she's the right person, who the hell is James Valliant to say, not 2 years later, that she is the wrong person, that she can't handle it, that she doesn't know anything? And furthermore, that isn't even the issue. She's his daughter. She's
But
his
if you-
daughter. Who's Grace? Is Grace the right person to inherit Atlas Shrugged and the Fountainhead?
It's not in this clip, but Valiant says something else that's completely absurd. He says that Grace's son Jay is more of an objectivist than Kira because Jay just started reading some Ayn Rand. That's absurd.
Put Jay in charge.
It's like,
Come
what
on,
is,
you guys.
what-
This is Kira versus Grace. This isn't Kira versus Peikoff.
But I mean, it's
Peikoff is
still-
going to die, and
it's
who is
fact-
going to have it?
It's factional. Do you want it to be controlled by ARRI and Kira, or do you want it to be who Leonard has handpicked to be on this committee based on their personal loyalty to him? And
Oh, you
know,
sweet
whether it's
summer child.
Valiant
Do you
and
think
this
there's going to be
lawyer-
a committee?
What?
I think there's going to be, you sweet summer child. You think there's going to be a committee?
Yes. She doesn't care about anything but getting the most money as the beneficiary. She's
Why the
still
hell
gonna
would
be
she
the
hold on to
benefic-
them then? Why wouldn't she sell them to the highest bidder?
It's going to
There's
be in
no
a
committee.
trust. She doesn't.
There's no committee.
Scott, your point before was that, which I disagree with, was that Leonard is wishy-washy on the copyrights and changes his mind all the time. So why do you think there's going to be a committee? He's going to change his mind tomorrow.
No, the committee is to protect Grace because of exactly what you're saying. They're going to say she has no business doing anything. She could do all these things. And they're saying, no, Leonard has set up a committee for her benefit. And
Which she
they're
can
going-
cancel at any time because she owns the copyrights.
I don't think she's going to be able to cancel it because it's the way the trust is being set up. But it is ultimately a kind
You are
of
assuming that Leonard Peikoff is setting up a trust to give everything to his wife, but give her no control over anything. I don't know why you think he's that capable.
So when
one,
he was
it's
gonna give
legal
the rights-
advice he's getting. He's getting it so that he's more likely to prevail in court over Kira's challenge.
He's going to be dead.
I understand that, but he still wants it to go his way after he's dead.
Well, when he was going to give the rights to Kira, he just said, I hope you do what's best and take the recommendations of Yaron and Tim. So it sounds like whoever's in charge of the rights, they can do whatever they want. It's not like they're going to have no control over what they own. So if there's a committee or there is not a committee, it's going to be up to Grace.
I understand it's being drafted that way now, that it's been drawn up that way. And it's still, Peikoff still gets power over who's going to be on the committee. It's even broader than just who he gives the money to.
There's not going to be a committee. There will be no committee. There
Okay,
will
so
be.
when someone,
Well,
when
assuming he wins the challenge.
Why would this con artist set up a committee of people who can tell her
It's-
what to do? Why
I'm
would
telling
she do
you
that?
that they're doing this to make it, if no other reason than to make it better for the courts, to make her claim seem stronger, that they're protecting Rand's
And then when
legacy.
she wins her court case, she'll change her freaking mind.
The court case is only going to be about whether she or Kira gets actual control.
Yeah. And then when she gets control, she'll do what she wants. And there
But
will
she
be no
can't
committee.
like change the terms of an irrevocable trust.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the answer to that. But why would she allow him to set it up so she gets no control? She'll be like, you got to make sure I get control. You
No,
can't just
but
leave
I
it at,
mean,
you know?
she
long
wouldn't
as-
know the right decisions to make in terms of like what's best in terms of approving,
Well,
a
James
new
is helping
book.
her, isn't she? Isn't he?
Well, he's going to be on the committee.
Well, it
There
doesn't
will be
matter.
no
We
committee.
don't really know. We're just speculating. But what I know is that Ayn Rand would, obviously, she'd be in love with the idea of a committee being in charge of her copyrights,
Right.
because she was just a big fan of committees.
She loved committees.
That's a fair
Committees
point.
always do the right thing.
Yeah. So this
Especially
guys-
that one's run by people like James Valliant, who nobody knows anything about.
Now we want to shift gears a little bit and present some material that Kira Peikoff sent me, because I was asking her for her side and if there was anything Leonard had given her that was positive and talking, nice things about her. Because I noticed on her Facebook feed that she had posted an audio clip from a chat bot that her father recorded for her. And she said there were like 4 hours worth of material. So she sent this audio clip to us. And I think it's important to play this so that we can hear Leonard Peikoff in his own voice talking about his daughter in very sweet terms and loving terms. So that we get an idea of like what he thought of his daughter before this whole controversy happened.
What I enjoyed most about being a father is hard to break up into separate points. The first thing I would say is it was a bond from the time I met her in the bonding room when she was just born. It was a bond that I knew was inseparable. Now, I felt that in my marriages, but it was not the same. This went like to the very core of my being, not just, oh, I love this baby, but this baby is me and independent of me, but I could no more have a divorce from the baby than from my own body. And I felt that even when we got mad at each other or argued, she always had that special aura. That is my Kira. I also enjoyed the evidence that she loved me when she did, when she wasn't, mad at me. We had some problem. I had a feeling that she was reciprocating my love. So it was like a marriage in the way people talk about it. I liked showing her things, helping to clarify the things for her, but that was a more intellectual thing. I remember when she was a baby and when she cried, I would take her for a ride in the car, just the two of us, and she would calm down. And I felt like as a nursing quality, a tenderness, I felt so special. When she was very young and she would be upset about something, I would just hold her in my arms and walk around. And she didn't speak, of course, at that point. I'd point out a painting, we had a lot of them on the walls, and just talk to her. And she would listen. I often talked to her when she was a baby because I had heard that the more you talk to a young baby, the more intelligent they become. And of course, I'm a compulsive talker. So I used that and I enjoyed it. She would listen to me. Obviously, she didn't understand, but she understood the expression and she understood the attention that she was getting.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that clip. That was a segment from the audio I received. And I like the line. Well, I like the line where he says he could no more have a divorce from the baby than from his own body. I mean, it's really nice sentiment coming from the father. And I think it's a shame that he's in his old age, he's forgotten how much of a bond he had with her.
He felt betrayed.
Yeah, were you going to say something, Sonny?
I think that for me, that really resonates as a mother. And like I said earlier in the show, it's one of the points to me in Kira's favor, and that points for me to dementia, because I don't think a parent in his right mind, in her right mind, speaks about their child the way that we've seen Peikoff supposedly and what the witnesses have said. Because you can call them greedy, you can call them names, but to say, I don't love her anymore, which he did say in that letter, that's shocking. And that's not really possible. I guess what I'm trying to say is what he said in that recording is what it feels like to be a parent. No matter what they do or what happens, you love them. You could be mad at them or you could be disappointed, but to say I don't love my child anymore is impossible for a healthy minded person. Something is off here. That to me is a red flag, I guess.
There are lots of Jewish families with unhealthy attitudes.
That's really sad.
It is.
Kira also sent me a letter. So that audio clip shows his feeling towards Kira as a child. But then this letter he sent her in January of 2022, it shows how he continued to feel about her as she was an adult. So I'm good. Sonny, you have the letter. Can you read the paragraphs?
Yeah, I'll read it. Okay. It says, this is an excerpt. This isn't even the whole thing. Okay. I love you, my sweetheart. And really, I think even more so as I saw you grow from a sweet baby to an independent girl who debuted her independence by springing from her crib on July 4th, who knew what she wanted from, again, Daddy, to graduate school at Columbia, and what you didn't want, from swimming lessons to settling into some unambitious and meaningless path. And all of this led to the passionate, strong willed, and beautiful woman that you are. Yes, beautiful. To me, that is what you are when your hair is down. You always choose your values and then worked hard as hell to achieve them. Creative writing, for example, from your early stories to becoming an aspiring writer to finding a New York agent all by yourself. That's something I didn't know. And then becoming a novelist with so many fine works. But not only a writer, you also found the practical knowledge needed to be a success in your career. You plunged into the unknown realm of publishing, learning to meet and know some of the individuals important to your career, and then to become not only a writer, but also a critic, an editor, and at the same time, more recently, running a major literary organization. Talk about the work ethic and creativity. So that was in January of 22.
And
Yeah,
that's
it's
right
kind
when
of
he gave the rights to ARRI.
it's kind of amazing, how he can express such love for his daughter and describe her as an independent woman who's achieved all these things. And with that letter, I also received a handwritten note that he gave her with that letter. And one of the lines in there is, "You know my doubts about being loved, but yours is what I have no doubt about." So he didn't doubt her love in 2022. And then just because of this controversy now, she's Hitler. It's just
It's
amazing.
not a little thing to try to seize all of someone's property.
If you're being
She
harmed
didn't
and
try to
taken
seize the
advantage
property.
of,
But from his perspective, where he doesn't see it that way.
That's the whole problem is
that's out of context, isn't it? I
he's
mean,
he's not being practical. That's the whole problem.
that is the problem. And it's a red flag and shows signs of mental decline.
Uh,
Which is her whole argument in the first place. You are mentally declined, you're being manipulated, and you're being isolated from me and all your friends by this woman who you've now given money, you're giving wealth to on a large scale. I mean, Scott,
Kira made some comments on June 29th that I really had an issue with, where she was trying to show that this wasn't about money. I know you've been led to believe my concerns were rooted in money, but that's simply not true. I took steps like the conservatorship out of deep concern for your well being because my access to you had been cut off, my intentions misinterpreted, and your own advisors urged me to act. I understand that you or perhaps James feel that the only way to prove my sincerity is to renounce any claim to your estate and agree not to take any further action. I'm willing to do that under one condition, that Grace and Jay also show you that they're with you for love, not money. If they renounce any claim to your estate and commit to donating any future proceeds from your estate to the Ayn Rand Institute, then I will gladly do the same. So I have a real issue with that because it shows that she's just continuing to negotiate about the money. And it also, I think, indicates to some extent, why Leonard, cut off a lot of the people at ARRI like Yaron, because yeah, she's only considering that because she knows that, she'd be taken care of.
she thinks he's being scammed.
I understand that, but we're still, because the conservatorship didn't go through, it's his assets in whatever state he's in to decide how to distribute.
In whatever state he's in, that can't be right.
Well, the law is that until it's adjudicated that he needs to be in a conservatorship.
But that's the whole issue here is that he's not mentally competent to handle these things. So that's the question.
That is the question. And I'm going to add here now something else, because California law is on Kira's side in this case. The presumption of guilt is against Grace because of her capacity as a nurse for him. That the fact that she was still working for him when they married and when she got money and the house actually violates the California law. And if they do go to court, she has to prove. It's like, if you immigrate here and you marry someone, you have to prove that you have like a real relationship. She has to prove, not Kira doesn't have to prove that she's dishonest. She has to prove that she's not, because the assumption is that she is dishonest, because this is what happens to old people every day of the week.
That
But
could be why
charges have been filed against Grace.
It could be why Valliant is now trying to rewrite history and say Grace wasn't his nurse.
And how she loves Viennese opera her whole life.
They're trying to paint her as some like assessor who came in just to see what Leonard needed.
Why would the other two nurses give an affidavit against Grace?
Yeah, and why would the person who hired
that's everyone just taking sides?
Why though? What incentive do they have to even take a side? They could just say, I saw nothing, I know nothing.
They got squeezed out too. And I'm sure they saw little things, but I mean, even what's reported, but like by Carl about the phone going silent for a minute. I mean, that's not
what about
means that he's totally
the
being
assessor
controlled.
Noticing the baby monitor on?
They may use that for making sure he's okay.
No, Grace was limiting Kira's contact to once a week or something like that. And then even in that case, she had trouble contacting her father because he wasn't answering. And so why wasn't he answering the phone?
This is all according to Kira, and we don't know how much of this was Leonard cutting off. We know from the phone call he recorded that he said, hey, if you want to be friends, you got to agree not to do the lawsuit.
This was before the lawsuit. This is
right. But I'm just saying, I mean,
all of this led up to the lawsuit, and she's not the only one claiming being isolated and cut off from Peikoff. There's a long, long list of all of his closest friends and associates that were cut off.
But were they cut off because they took Kira's side?
No, some of it was allegedly.
Some of it was before the conservator.
Grace and Jay were manipulating the communication lines. So this is all before the conservatorship lawsuit. It's what led up to the lawsuit.
Right.
And Kira started hearing these stories about how Leonard was being manipulated and mistreated.
I mean, whether he was, I understand. I'm just saying those are Kira's allegations.
No, they're not. You're dismissing what I'm saying. These are testimonies from Shelley Jones, from the other nurse, from other people.
Two nurses.
I just see them as all interested parties. I mean, Shelley was also Carl Barney's executive assistant.
So, but you see them as interested, but you don't see Grace as interested and James as interested.
I do see her as interested. She's absolutely interested in the estate, and but.
What about James? What's his interest in this?
Well, I think he actually just has a lifelong loyalty to Peikoff, wants to be
Kira doesn't.
Life defender.
But Kira, his own daughter, has no loyalty. It's all about money. But James, who barely knew him.
I don't think James is getting paid big bucks out of this or anything.
You don't know. You don't know what arrangement he has with Grace.
But you don't know that Kira wasn't calling and badgering her father for money to the point where he wanted a restraining order, like James alleges.
He's had her whole life with her. 2 years ago, he's saying you're the greatest thing ever, and now she's badgering and harassing him for money.
I'm saying at the point
she got along with all of her. She got along with all of her other stepmothers and his girlfriends, but this one, no.
Look, it's unseemly for an older man to get with a young woman. An interesting point James brought up is that Grace is actually older than Amy.
First of all,
he's 90 something now. He can't even get out of bed.
We don't know, what goes on in that house. So all we know is the testimonies were being given, and that's the evidence. And you're speculating a lot, Scott. And that's not
Peikoff's still
evidence.
alive.
So that's not
He can't
the
be
issue here.
getting that terrible care.
I feel like that's the crux of it, is people want this to be like Peikoff is of sound mind and he's making this decision and he's got this young new wife and he's having fun and Kira doesn't like it and she should shut up and let him have his fun. He's about to be dead. Like that's kind of the mentality.
Well, no, it's just, I mean, the thing is, it's unseemly and it's seemingly also opposed to objectivism, which I think is part of why a lot more people are taking Kira's attitude. It's like, oh, is this supposed to be some, long-term, rational self-interest when he's just, wanting to have great, loving in his old age. And he's willing to give, his inheritance for it. And
it's not objectivism to be defrauded and manipulated. If that's what's going on,
if
someone
that's
needs
what's
to
going
step
on.
in. And there's evidence
and that's
for
what
that.
Kira's saying, and there is evidence for that.
But there's
And not only that, there's the onus of proof is on Grace per California law. There's not just evidence,
that
like
maybe
there's law
is somewhat
and
true, but I think they would have pursued that if they could, just independent criminal charges against her. And they haven't, and I don't think there's a good enough case.
Well, it's not up to Kira to do that. That if it's a criminal case, then some prosecutor has to do it. So
Right,
maybe
but
they're
I'm
both-
sure they
maybe they're both
explored
okay.
that, like encouraging a prosecution or at least
I'm
an
not sure that
investigation.
it's criminal. I think it's a civil issue, but it says goes to the filing for the conservatorship and whether or not she could get control away from this woman that he's married. They're calling it undue influence is the legal term. And I'm not a lawyer, but there's a whole list of things and she's done all of these things.
Well,
I mean, it's literally 1, 2, 3, 4 unfair, confidential relationship, vulnerability of the victim, unfair persuasion, unfair outcome. That leads to this presumption of undue influence in a caregiver.
Well, obviously, since Kira will steadfastly not drop the charges, and it's interesting. Earlier on, she said that I will not put conditions on seeing my father, but she would if Grace would. But William, you wanted to make a point. You had a theory about an error that Rand pointed out about Peikoff.
Right. We mentioned this earlier, but we do have a clip of Leonard answering a question on his podcast. He used to answer questions on his website, and the audio clip is still up there. But someone took the audio clip and turned it into a YouTube video, so we're going to watch the YouTube video version of it. He is answering a question about Alan Greenspan, but the core that we're going to play, the core of it is him talking about an observation Ayn Rand made regarding an error that he and Alan made in different directions regarding the moral practical.
In the early days, when both Alan and I were getting to know Ayn Rand, she observed that there was a difference between us, that we both committed a certain error in opposite directions. I gave too much emphasis to the moral and not enough to the practical, and Alan too much emphasis to the practical and not enough to the moral. And she told us we each had to work to correct this error, not separate mind and body. And I did work, if I say so myself, and ultimately did integrate the two. But Alan never did.
Yeah, so I think that's important because it shows that Leonard Peikoff in the early days was made aware of an error he had, and he tried to integrate mind and body, moral and practical, and fix this error. But what I think is happening now, in his old age, he's having memory lapses, and I think he's forgetting to integrate mind and body. And he's got this habit, he's reverting to this old habit again, because he's essentially forgetting that he has this problem and that he needs to fix it. Like I used to have a problem where I was sarcastic and cynical, and I was made aware of it actually by someone at the Ayn Rand Institute. And so I've been consciously trying to fix this myself, because I notice I'll have certain thoughts. My initial thoughts are sarcastic or cynical, and I'll check it, because I have a standing order to check it. And then I'll move on and I'll find some thought that isn't cynical or sarcastic. And I think this is what's going on in Leonard's head, is his first initial thoughts are to emphasize the moral over the practical, and he's forgetting to check it. And so he comes out and calls his daughter Hitler, and comes out with these ridiculous moral evaluations of his daughter. And then on the other side, he forgets the practical. He's just forgetting to speak for himself. He's letting all this gossip come out through Valliant. And he can't even go out there and speak for himself. He's forgetting the practical consequences of not doing certain things, like speaking for yourself. And this is the situation we're in now.
Now, he has a history of, making just small comments that people tear apart each word for meaning. So, and plus he's older. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I just think that there are two sides to the story, and ultimately this thing is going to be fought out in court. Sonny, any final thoughts?
Yeah, okay. My take is that there are a lot of facts against Grace and James's side of things, that we're just starting out with just a basic common sense viewpoint of the situation, that this is the Filipina scam, as William mentioned. The nurse
we don't
taking
know
advantage.
That.
It is an actual scam.
Well,
Google it.
I'm not saying that that's what's going on with Grace necessarily. We don't know that.
What I'm saying is that exists. The appearance of this is that that's what's happening. She's 40 years younger. He's disabled and very old and very wealthy. And suddenly there's this nurse. There are all these reports of deliberate monitoring and isolation from multiple sources. Also, people who don't really have an interest. I don't think these two nurses have an ongoing interest. I mean, unless you're accusing Kira of paying them to make such a statement, which I don't think you are. You're just saying, well, they were fired, so whatever. Also, Valliant has been caught in multiple lies, and he's deleting any questions or any comments. He's trying to create a narrative, and we've seen that over and over and over with him. So I don't think he's credible at all. And the fact that he was married in a courthouse with just her son as a witness, and nobody knew it was happening. And according to Kira, he didn't even know it was happening that day, or according to Shelley, I think it was, I can't remember. The list of people isolated from him is long. People who had been in his life for decades prior. And so everything, to me, the onus is on them to prove that, on Peikoff, if he's of sound mind, and Grace, if she's not a gold digging con artist, to come out and actually present themselves at this point. And if not, we should assume the worst. And I believe if ARRI wasn't a bunch of losers, which, to your point, Scott, Peikoff himself created that environment by pushing for this purity and, shedding anyone with a backbone. He's left with morons who have no backbone, or shysters like Yaron who take both sides and don't take a stand. Nobody's going to come out and defend him and push for what's right and maybe back Kira. Anyway, to conclude, I just feel like it's on them to prove that everything is okay. It looks very, very bad to me as a fairly impartial person, because honestly, I'm on Peikoff's side. But if Peikoff's side and Objectivism's side means that I have to be on Kira's side because he's being manipulated and taken advantage of by a con artist, a couple of con artists, including maybe potentially James Valliant, then, and maybe Andrew Lewis needs to come out. Like these people that James Valliant listed as not being isolated, where are their statements? Yeah, we haven't seen a statement from them. We only have statements on the other side.
They did the video last year. Grace came in for a second into the video, and they feel like they've somewhat done that already.
That's
Andrew
not
Lewis-
Andrew Lewis or Amanda Martin or Catherine Dickinson or Elon Journo or Tal Tesfani. Where
So
are their
Andrew Lewis-
statements?
Andrew Lewis gave some comments to the Atlantic, but he didn't. I don't think in the Atlantic he mentioned that Kira hadn't read any Ayn Rand. So that's something Valiant attributed to Andrew Lewis that Andrew could come out and confirm or deny.
Andrew's definitely going to be on the committee. We already know 2 of those 5 spots. So I know
There will
there's
be no
not going to be a
committee.
committee, but so I think we talked a lot about a lot of really good stuff today. I think there's just a lot more to know, and I hope you can appreciate me just seeing it from the other side. And
I think it's better that we
believe me,
disagreed
I
because
have
it's
no
interesting.
closeness. What?
It's better that we disagreed. It made it more interesting conversation.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Good. Well, great. Well, I am Scott Schiff along with William Swig and Sonny Lohman. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.